The day I found grandfather's note was the same day my mother called to remind me what a disappointment I'd become. I was organizing his medication when the folded paper slipped from between his leather-bound journals, landing softly on the antique Persian rug he loved so much. My name is Bianca, and 6 months ago, I walked away from a promising career as an architect to care for my grandfather. According to my family, it was the stupidest decision of my life. Sweetheart, you're wasting your potential. Mom's voice crackled through my phone's speaker as I picked up the note. Your father and I didn't pay for your education so you could play nurse. I tucked the paper into my pocket, saving it for later. Mom, we've been through this. Grandfather needs me. He needs a professional caregiver, not his granddaughter throwing away her future. The familiar edge in her voice made me wince. Celeste just made junior partner at her firm, you know. Of course she had. My cousin Celeste's achievements were like carefully placed daggers in every conversation. That's wonderful, I said, arranging grandfather's pills in his weekly organizer. I have to go. Grandfather's physical therapist is coming. After hanging up, I found grandfather in his study, surrounded by architectural drawings and old photographs. At 82, he still commanded attention. Silver hair perfectly combed, posture straight, despite his failing health. Bianca, come here, he called, gesturing to the leather chair beside him. I want to show you something. I settled next to him, breathing in the familiar scent of leather and old books. He spread out a yellowed blueprint across his desk. This was my first major project, he said, his finger tracing the elegant lines of what became the city's most iconic building. Everyone said it couldn't be done. The angles were too ambitious, the structure too complex. But you proved them wrong, I finished, having heard this story before, but never tiring of it. He squeezed my hand. Just like you will, my dear. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of Uncle Anthony, his expensive cologne announcing his presence before he appeared in the doorway. Dad, you shouldn't be working, he boomed, striding in. Doctor's orders, remember. I noticed how he barely glanced at the blueprints, pieces of history that told our family's story. These aren't work, Anthony, grandfather said firmly. These are memories. Well, you need rest, not memories. Uncle Anthony turned to me. Bianca, shouldn't you be making sure he's in bed? Before I could respond, grandfather's voice cut through the tension. I'm not dead yet, son, and I'll spend my time as I choose, with whom I choose. Uncle Anthony's face reddened, but he forced a smile. Of course, Dad, I'm just concerned about your health. We all are. Is that why this is only your second visit in 6 months? I couldn't help asking. The silence that followed was deafening. I've been busy, Uncle Anthony muttered, checking his watch. Speaking of which, I have a meeting. I'll stop by again soon, Dad. After he left, I remembered the note in my pocket. Grandfather, I found this earlier. It fell from one of your journals. He took the paper, his eyes crinkling with amusement as he read it. Ah, yes, I was wondering when you'd find this. What is it? A reminder, he said cryptically, folding it carefully and handing it back. Read it when you're alone. You'll understand when the time comes. That evening, after ensuring grandfather was comfortable in bed, I finally unfolded the note in the solitude of my room. The handwriting was shaky, but determined. To my dearest Bianca, they think it's about the money. Let them. You alone have shown me that legacy isn't measured in dollars, but in understanding. Watch closely, learn deeply, and remember, the greatest revenge is living well. With love, grandfather. I read it 3 times, my heart pounding. What was he planning? Before I could ponder further, my phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Bethany. Heads up, sweetie, Celeste is coming tomorrow. Says she wants to help. Be careful. I sighed, tucking the note into my journal. The vultures were circling, drawn by the scent of inheritance. But they didn't know my grandfather like I did. Something told me he had more than money in mind for his legacy. Looking out my window at the sprawling estate grounds, I remembered his words from years ago. Architecture isn't just about buildings, Bianca. It's about creating spaces where life happens, where stories unfold. I had a feeling our family's biggest story was just beginning to unfold. Celeste arrived the next morning in her signature style, designer outfit, perfect makeup, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. I was helping grandfather with breakfast when she swept into the kitchen. "Uncle Rodrigo," she exclaimed, rushing to kiss his cheek. "You look wonderful. Bianca must be taking good care of you." Grandfather's eyes met mine over his oatmeal, a slight smirk playing at his lips. "She is. Though I suspect you're not here just to compliment my caregiver. Can't a niece visit her favorite uncle?" Celeste perched on the edge of a kitchen chair, carefully arranging her skirt. "Besides, I brought something to show you." She pulled out a glossy portfolio, and I recognized the logo of her architectural firm. "Our latest project. I thought you might want to see what the family legacy is up to these days." The jab wasn't subtle. I busied myself cleaning dishes while Celeste showed off her designs for a new shopping complex. "Very modern," grandfather said diplomatically. "But where's the soul?" Celeste's smile faltered. "Soul? The human element. These buildings, they're efficient, yes, but where do people gather? Where do memories form?" Before Celeste could respond, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Uncle Anthony and Aunt Bethany on the doorstep. "Family reunion?" I asked dryly. Aunt Bethany hugged me tight, whispering, "Strength in numbers, dear. They're all coming." She wasn't wrong. Within an hour, the house was full of relatives I hadn't seen in months. My parents arrived last, Mom in her pearls, Dad absorbed in his phone. "Bianca," Mom air-kissed my cheek. "The house looks lived in." "That's because people actually live here," I replied. Grandfather watched it all from his favorite armchair, looking more amused than tired. "What's the occasion?" he asked, as everyone settled into the living room. Uncle Anthony cleared his throat. "We're concerned, Dad, about your care, your estate planning, my money," grandfather finished bluntly. "Your legacy," Celeste corrected smoothly. "We want to ensure everything is properly arranged." "Ah, yes, my legacy." Grandfather's eyes twinkled. "Bianca, would you fetch that blue folder from my study? The one marked Future Plans." I found the folder exactly where he said it would be. But as I reached for it, a loose sketch caught my eye. It was a rough drawing of the estate grounds, but reimagined into something beautiful and community-focused. The date in the corner was just 2 months old. When I returned, the atmosphere had grown tense. "All I'm saying," Uncle Anthony was arguing, "is that professional care would be better for everyone." "Better for whom?" Grandfather's voice was sharp. "For Bianca, who's shown more care for this family's true legacy than any of you? Or better for your conscience while you wait for me to die?" The room fell silent. "Dad," my mother started, but grandfather held up his hand. "My mind is clear, my will is set, and my lawyer has everything in order." He took the folder from me. "But since you're all so interested in my legacy, let me show you something." He opened the folder, revealing not financial documents, but old photographs and sketches. Every building I designed began with a story. The people who would live there, work there, dream there. That was my legacy. Not the money, but the vision. "And what does that have to do with estate planning?" Uncle Anthony demanded. Grandfather smiled. "Everything. Bianca understands, don't you, dear?" I thought of the sketch I'd just seen in his study. "You're still designing, aren't you? Until my last breath." He turned to the others. "My legacy isn't just sitting in bank accounts. It's in every building I created, every space I transformed. The question is, who among you understands that?" Celeste leaned forward eagerly. "I do, Uncle. I'm an architect too." "You design boxes for profit," grandfather interrupted. "I created homes for memories." The meeting dissolved shortly after that, with everyone leaving in various states of frustration. Only Aunt Bethany lingered. "He's planning something," she said quietly, as we watched the cars pull away. "And whatever it is, you're at the center of it." "I know," I replied, thinking of his note and the mysterious sketch. "But why?" "Because you see what they don't. She squeezed my shoulder. Just be prepared. They'll be back, and they won't be happy. That evening, as I helped grandfather to bed, he seemed more energetic than usual. Did you enjoy the show today? I asked. He chuckled. Oh, that was just the overture, my dear. The real performance is yet to come. He gripped my hand suddenly, his eyes intense. Remember what I taught you about foundations, Bianca? That they have to be strong enough to support what's built on top. Exactly, and sometimes, he paused meaningfully. The strongest foundations are built on understanding, not concrete. I had a feeling he wasn't talking about architecture anymore. 3 days after the family gathering, I discovered grandfather's hidden study. I'd been searching for his missing medication log when I noticed something odd about the bookshelf in his private office. A leather-bound volume of architectural drawings sat slightly askew, and behind it gleamed a small brass lever. My heart raced as I pulled it. The entire shelf swung forward with a soft click, revealing a narrow door. "Well played, grandfather," I whispered, pushing it open. The hidden room was small but meticulously organized. Drawings covered the walls, but these weren't the famous buildings everyone knew. They were different. Intimate spaces, community centers, public gardens, projects I'd never seen or heard of. I wondered when you'd find this place. Grandfather's voice made me jump. He stood in the doorway, leaning on his cane. "You shouldn't be up here," I said automatically. "The stairs are worth climbing for this conversation." He shuffled in, easing himself into an old leather chair. "What do you see, Bianca?" I gestured to the walls. "Projects I didn't know about, but they're different from your other work. Because these were never built." He pointed to a detailed sketch of a community center. This one, designed for the Lower East Side, would have provided childcare, job training, elderly services. The investors wanted luxury condos instead. "So you walked away?" "Sometimes the projects we don't build say more about us than the ones we do." He reached for a dusty portfolio on the desk. "Here's something else you should see." Inside were letters, hundreds of them. Thank you notes from families who'd lived in his buildings, from communities he'd helped design spaces for. "Your cousin Celeste thinks architecture is about making statements," he said. "Your mother believes it's about making money. But you—" He took my hand. "You understand, it's about making life better for people." A noise from downstairs interrupted us. Voices drifted up. Celeste and Uncle Anthony. "They're early," grandfather muttered. "Quick, help me back down. And Bianca." He pressed a key into my palm. "Come back here tonight. There's more you need to see." We barely made it back to the main floor before Celeste appeared. "Uncle Rodrigo," her eyes narrowed at his slightly labored breathing. "Should you be moving around so much?" "I'm not dead yet," he snapped. "What brings you both here?" Uncle Anthony stepped forward. "We've been talking to Paul about the will. Have you now?" Grandfather's voice turned icy. "And what did my lawyer tell you?" "Nothing useful," Celeste muttered. "Because there's nothing to tell until the proper time." Grandfather settled into his usual chair. "Now, if you're done trying to peek at your Christmas presents early." They left reluctantly, but not before I caught Celeste giving me a suspicious look. That night, after grandfather was asleep, I slipped back to the hidden study. The key opened a small safe, built into the wall, containing a single envelope and a leather journal. The envelope held another note. "For when you need proof that doing the right thing matters more than doing the profitable thing." The journal was more revealing. It detailed projects grandfather had turned down, deals he'd walked away from, all because they compromised his principles. But more importantly, it showed what he'd done instead. Smaller projects that helped communities, pro bono work for schools and churches, designs donated to neighborhoods that needed them. My phone buzzed, a text from Aunt Bethany. "Watch your back. Celeste was asking questions about your time with your grandfather. She's plotting something." As if on cue, I heard footsteps in the hallway below. I quickly replaced everything, closed the hidden door, and stepped out of the office, directly into Celeste. "Bit late for snooping, isn't it?" she asked sweetly. "I could ask you the same thing. Just checking on Uncle Rodrigo." She glanced past me at the office. "Finding anything interesting up here?" "Only what grandfather wants me to find." Her smile tightened. "You know, Bianca, this devoted granddaughter act is touching, but we both know what you're really doing. Do we? Playing the long game. Making yourself indispensable." She stepped closer. "But remember, I'm the one who followed in his footsteps. I'm the real architect in the family now." "Is that what you think this is about? Career choices?" "It's about everything." She turned to leave, but paused. "By the way, I've hired a private nurse to check on grandfather regularly. For his own good, of course." After she left, I returned to the hidden room, understanding flooding through me. The projects, the letters, the journal. Grandfather wasn't just leaving a legacy, he was leaving a message. And somehow, I knew that message would be the key to whatever he had planned. I took out my phone and texted Aunt Bethany. "Need to talk. Grandfather's legacy is bigger than anyone realizes." Her response came quickly. "Meet me tomorrow, early. And Bianca, don't trust the nurse Celeste hired. Nothing she does is without purpose." Looking at the walls of hidden projects around me, I whispered, "Message received, grandfather," loud and clear. The call came at 3 a.m. Grandfather had collapsed. By the time I reached the hospital, the vultures were already circling. "Where's Paul?" Uncle Anthony paced the waiting room. "He needs to be here. Our father is fighting for his life, and you're worried about the lawyer?" Mom's voice dripped with disdain, but I noticed she kept checking her phone too. Celeste sat primly in a corner, the private nurse she'd hired standing nearby. Something about their body language set off warning bells. "What happened?" I demanded of the nurse. "I found him in his study," she replied smoothly. "He was having difficulty breathing." "But you weren't scheduled for tonight," I said. "Why were you there?" Before she could answer, Paul walked in, looking grave in his rumpled suit. "I came as soon as I heard. How is he?" "Stable," Aunt Bethany answered from the doorway. She'd been talking to the doctors. "But he's asking for Bianca." The collective intake of breath was almost comical. "I'll come too." Celeste stood quickly. "He asked for Bianca," Aunt Bethany repeated firmly. "Only Bianca." Grandfather looked small in the hospital bed, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "Did you find everything in the study?" he whispered as I sat beside him. "Yes, but that's not important right now. What happened?" "Oh, this?" He gestured weakly at himself. "Just perfect timing. They're all here, aren't they?" "Grandfather, did you plan this?" He winked. "Let's say I knew when to take my final bow. Paul has everything ready?" "Ready for what?" "You'll see." He gripped my hand suddenly. "Remember what you learned in the hidden study, Bianca. Every design tells a story. Every choice reveals character." His words were interrupted by a commotion outside. Through the door's window, I could see Paul talking to the family, holding up official-looking documents. "Go," Grandfather said. "It's time." I joined the others, just as Paul was saying. "As Mr. Rodrigo is still of sound mind, he's requested we proceed with the reading now." "Now?" Mom looked scandalized. "But he's not dead," Paul finished dryly. Precisely his point. We gathered in a private waiting room. Paul pulled out a tablet and several folders. "The will is unusual," he began. "The estate, valued at approximately $60 million, will be distributed based on a challenge." "A what?" Uncle Anthony exploded. Paul continued, as if uninterrupted. "Each potential heir must demonstrate their understanding of Rodrigo's life's work through a project of their own design. You have 3 months. "This is ridiculous." Mom stood up. "We'll contest it." "You can try," Paul said. "But everything's legally binding. And there's more. The projects must benefit the community, not private interests. They must show an understanding of what Rodrigo calls the soul of architecture." Celeste's face had gone pale. "And who judges these projects?" "A panel selected by Rodrigo, including community leaders, and architectural experts. Paul looked around the room. Any other questions? What happens if we refuse to participate? Uncle Anthony demanded. Then your share goes to those who do. Paul began distributing folders. Inside, you'll find detailed requirements and resources available to you. Good luck. As the others left, shell-shocked and angry, Paul held me back. There's something else. For you. He handed me a separate envelope. Your grandfather said you'd understand. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a familiar sketch, the one I'd seen in the hidden study. Below it, grandfather had written, "Sometimes the best revenge is showing them what they missed while counting money they didn't have yet." I returned to grandfather's room. He was sitting up, looking stronger already. "You're not really dying, are you?" He grinned. "Let's say I'm giving them motivation to learn their lessons quickly." Did Paul explain everything? A challenge? Really? Money is easy to inherit, Bianca. Wisdom has to be earned. He patted the bed beside him. They all think architecture is about building walls. You understand, it's about building connections. And the nurse? The collapse? A little theater never hurt anyone. Besides, your cousin's hired help was getting too nosy about my office. His expression turned serious. The next few months will be difficult. They'll try to stop you, copy you, maybe even sabotage you. But you have something they don't. What's that? Understanding and a head start. He nodded toward the envelope in my hands. That sketch, it's not just a design. It's a key to everything I've been planning. Use it well. Outside, I could hear my family arguing, their voices rising with anger and confusion. But for the first time since this all began, I felt completely calm. The game was on, and grandfather had just dealt the perfect hand. 2 weeks after the hospital drama, I found my project plans scattered across the floor of grandfather's study. Someone had been through them, leaving muddy fingerprints on my carefully drawn designs. Looking for something, Celeste stood in the doorway, holding a coffee cup. "Oh my, what happened here?" "Drop the act," I said, gathering my papers. "I know it was you." "Prove it." She sipped her coffee. "Besides, sharing ideas is what family does, right? Is that what you call stealing?" "I call it research." She stepped closer. "You know, I visited that community center you've been talking to. Fascinating how they suddenly won't work with me." I kept my face neutral, remembering my morning meeting with the center's director. They'd chosen my proposal over Celeste's flashier but less practical design. Maybe they preferred a project that actually served their needs, I suggested. Or maybe you poisoned them against me. Her smile turned sharp. Two can play that game. After she left, I called Aunt Bethany. "She's desperate," Aunt Bethany said. "Your mother told me Celeste's firm is pressuring her for results. They expected to handle grandfather's estate development." "She's not the only one getting desperate," I replied, describing the ransacked study. "Uncle Anthony's been calling contractors I've worked with, trying to undermine my relationships. They're scared, sweetie. You're the only one who's made real progress." She paused. "Have you checked the hidden room lately?" I froze. "Why?" "Just do it. Now." The hidden door stuck slightly. Someone had tried forcing it. Inside, papers were missing from the safe. "Damn it," I muttered, quickly checking the most important documents. The journal was still there, but several letters were gone. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. "Family meeting. Tonight? Non-negotiable." The meeting was at my parents' house. Everyone except grandfather attended, including Paul, who looked uncomfortable. "This challenge is tearing us apart," Mom announced. "We need to work together." "You mean give up and split everything equally?" I asked. "We mean pool our resources," Uncle Anthony said. "Share information, work as a team, like how Celeste shared by going through my designs." Celeste straightened. "I did no such thing." "Enough." Dad actually looked up from his phone. "This is exactly what we're talking about. We're family." "Family?" I stood up. Where was this family spirit when grandfather needed care, when he was asking for visits, when he tried sharing his wisdom instead of his wallet? "Don't be dramatic," Mom sighed. "We're trying to help you." No, you're trying to control me, just like you're trying to control grandfather's legacy. Paul cleared his throat. Perhaps I should mention that any collaboration must be disclosed to the judging panel. It would likely disqualify all participants. What? Celeste's voice rose. That's not fair. Neither is breaking into private studies. I shot back. The meeting devolved into chaos after that. As I left, Aunt Bethany caught up with me in the driveway. They're planning something bigger, she warned. I overheard Anthony talking about getting grandfather declared incompetent. They can't do that. They can try. And they might succeed, especially if they can prove he's been hiding things, like secret rooms full of documents. My blood ran cold. The missing papers. Exactly. Be careful, Bianca, and maybe move anything important to a safer place. Back at the estate, I found grandfather in his regular study, looking through old photographs. They're trying to have you declared incompetent, I told him. Of course they are. He didn't even look up. Did you notice what they stole? Some letters, documents. Wait, you knew? I knew they'd try something like this eventually. Now he smiled. That's why everything in that room was carefully selected. What they stole will only prove my competence and their greed. You set a trap, I realized. I set several. The question is, are you ready for what comes next? What do you mean? He handed me a photograph. It showed a beautiful public garden with a distinctive architectural feature I recognized from my own designs. That's almost exactly what I've been planning for the community center. Because great minds think alike, he said. And because you understand what they never will. Architecture isn't about building monuments to ourselves. It's about creating spaces that build community. They'll try to stop me, I said. Of course they will, but remember, every obstacle they put in your way only proves why you're the right choice. He squeezed my hand. Now, shall we discuss how to use their own tricks against them? For the first time since this all began, I saw the full scope of grandfather's plan. This wasn't just about inheritance or architecture. It was about exposing who we really were, all of us. And some people wouldn't like what was about to be revealed. The competency hearing was scheduled for Thursday. I found out when Aunt Bethany burst into the community center, where I was reviewing plans with the director. They did it, she gasped, waving court papers. Anthony and your mother filed the papers this morning. Sarah, the center's director, looked between us. Is this going to affect our project? No, I said firmly, even as my hands shook. The plans are approved and funded. They can't stop it now, but they can stop everything else, Aunt Bethany said. If they win, they'll control all of grandfather's assets. Back at the estate, I found Celeste in grandfather's study, rifling through his desk. Looking for more evidence, I asked coldly. She didn't even pretend to be embarrassed. He's not well, Bianca. These ridiculous challenges prove it. We're doing this for his own good. You're doing it for your firm's good. I saw the development plans they filed. Her eyes narrowed. How did you? I still have friends in architecture. The moment grandfather's declared incompetent, your firm plans to bulldoze half his properties for luxury condos. It's called progress. It's called betrayal. Grandfather's voice cut through our argument. Ladies, if you're done discussing my mental state, I'd like to speak with my granddaughter. Celeste retreated, but not before giving me a look that promised this wasn't over. They're scared, grandfather said once we were alone. Your community center project is gaining attention. The kind of attention that makes their luxury developments look bad. They're trying to stop it. No, he smiled. They're trying to steal it. Check your email. I pulled out my phone. There it was, a message from Celeste's firm offering to collaborate on my project, with their name featured prominently. They can't just. They can try. Grandfather handed me a folder, which is why we're going to give them exactly what they want. Inside were documents I recognized from the hidden room, but these were different, modified. Are these fake? Of course, the real ones are safe with Paul. These are what they'll find when they go snooping again. and they will snoop again. The next day, I left the folder conspicuously in the study while meeting with the community center team. Sure enough, when I returned, the papers were slightly disturbed. That evening, my phone exploded with messages. Mom wanted an emergency meeting. Uncle Anthony was making barely veiled threats. Celeste was suddenly offering to withdraw from the challenge if I'd be reasonable. They took the bait, I told grandfather. Of course they did. Now watch what happens. The competency hearing was packed. Our entire family, plus what looked like half of Celeste's firm, filled the courtroom. Uncle Anthony's lawyer presented their case first, cherry-picked evidence of grandfather's erratic behavior and suspicious documents. Then Paul stood up. Your Honor, before we continue, I'd like to present some evidence of my own. He pulled out a thick folder. These are the original documents that were recently stolen from Mr. Rodrigo's study. Note the timestamps and authentication marks. The judge examined them. These appear to be standard business documents. Exactly, Paul smiled. Now let's compare them to the altered versions that mysteriously appeared in their place. Alterations made after certain parties gained unauthorized access to Mr. Rodrigo's private study. The courtroom erupted. Uncle Anthony's face turned purple. Celeste's lawyer started whispering frantically to her. Furthermore, Paul continued, I have here detailed records of attempts to sabotage legitimate business projects, including documented evidence of corporate espionage, targeting Mr. Rodrigo's charitable initiatives. Mom stood up. This is ridiculous. We're trying to protect our father's legacy. Are you? Grandfather's voice rang out as he entered the courtroom, walking steadily without his cane. Is that why you tried to steal your daughter's project? Why you planned to destroy communities I spent decades building? The judge looked over her glasses. Mr. Rodrigo, you seem quite competent to me. Because I am, Your Honor. This hearing isn't about my mental state. It's about greed versus legacy, and I've been documenting everything. The case was dismissed within the hour. Outside the courthouse, Aunt Bethany hugged me tight. You knew, she whispered. You and grandfather planned this. Sometimes the best defense is letting people reveal themselves, I replied, watching my family retreat in disgrace. Grandfather joined us, looking more energetic than he had in weeks. Ready for phase 2? There's more? He grinned. My dear, we've only just begun. They showed their true colors. Now it's time to show them what real legacy looks like. Looking at their retreating backs, I finally understood. This wasn't just about winning. It was about teaching them the difference between inheriting wealth and earning wisdom. And the lesson was far from over. The day of the final project presentations arrived with a mix of tension and anticipation. The community center auditorium was packed, not just with the judging panel, but with local residents, media, and of course, our entire family. Celeste presented first, her sleek digital presentation, displaying a luxury wellness complex. This project honors our family's architectural legacy while bringing premium amenities to the area, she announced proudly. And what happens to the existing community garden? One judge asked. Progress requires sacrifice, Celeste replied smoothly. But we're offering discounted membership to displaced residents. Uncle Anthony went next, proposing a high-rise office complex. Mom didn't even bother presenting, claiming the whole process was beneath her. Then it was my turn. Before I show my design, I began, I'd like you to meet some people. I gestured to the audience. Mrs. Rodriguez, would you start? An elderly woman stood up. I've lived here 40 years. Rodrigo designed our neighborhood community center. It's where my children learned to read, where I took citizenship classes, where our community became family. More people stood, each sharing stories about how grandfather's designs had shaped their lives. With each testimony, I saw my family shifting uncomfortably in their seats. This, I said, unveiling my design, is not just my project. It's our project. The blueprints, showed a revolutionary integration of the existing community center with new facilities, affordable housing, job training spaces, childcare facilities, and green areas that preserve the community garden while expanding it. But the real innovation isn't in the buildings, I continued. It's in how they connect. Every space flows into the next, creating natural gathering places. Just like grandfather taught me, architecture isn't about walls. It's about the life that happens between them. I clicked to the next slide. And this is where it gets interesting. These buildings, they're already funded. Not by developers or corporations, but by a trust grandfather established years ago. Gasps from my family. Grandfather, sitting in the front row, was beaming. The trust stipulates that all projects must benefit the community and be approved by a resident council. It's not about profit, it's about people. That was always grandfather's real legacy. The judges asked detailed questions, which I answered with confidence, born from months of working directly with the community. When they asked about financial viability, I produced partnership agreements with local businesses and educational institutions. This isn't charity, I explained. It's investment in human capital. Every space generates sustainable income while serving community needs. After the presentations, while the judges deliberated, Celeste cornered me. "You think you're so clever," she hissed, "but you've ruined everything." My firm pulled their backing after that competency hearing fiasco. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," I suggested. "You're talented, Celeste. Imagine what you could do if you designed for people instead of profit." "Oh, spare me the sanctimonious. The judges have reached their decision," Paul announced. We gathered back in the auditorium. The head judge, a renowned architect herself, stood up. "We've reviewed all submissions carefully," she began. "While each project showed technical merit, only one truly captured the essence of Rodrigo's architectural philosophy. The understanding that buildings are more than structures, they're vessels for human connection and growth." She paused, looking directly at me. "Bianca's project not only demonstrates this understanding, but builds upon it for future generations. It's exactly the kind of legacy-minded thinking this challenge was designed to reveal." The audience erupted in applause. Community members rushed to hug me. Through the crowd, I saw Mom and Uncle Anthony leaving quietly. Celeste stood frozen, tears in her eyes. Grandfather made his way to the podium, moving easier than he had in months. "Before everyone leaves," he announced, "I have one final surprise." He beckoned me forward. "Bianca, you've proven you understand that true legacy isn't about money. It's about impact. Which is why I'm not just naming you my heir." He handed me an envelope. Inside was paperwork, making me the new head of his architectural firm. "The money," he continued, "that's already been placed in the community trust you discovered. Your family members will receive reasonable stipends, provided they contribute meaningfully to community projects." More gasps, some angry mutters. But also, was that relief on Celeste's face? "Anyone who wants to work with Bianca, to learn what I tried to teach you all along, is welcome," grandfather said. This was never about punishment. It was about understanding what matters. Later, as we watched the sunset from his study, grandfather handed me his old leather journal. "You know," he said, "revenge doesn't always mean destroying your enemies. Sometimes it means showing them a better way to live." "Do you think they'll take the offer?" I asked. He smiled. "Some will, some won't. But you've given them something they never had before." "What's that?" "A choice between who they are and who they could be." He squeezed my hand. "Now, shall we discuss your first official project as head of the firm?" Looking at the journal in my hands, I felt the weight of real legacy. Not in dollars, but in possibility. The community center's grand opening drew hundreds of people. As I cut the ribbon, I spotted Celeste in the crowd, hanging back uncertainly. She looked different, more relaxed in jeans and a simple blouse, instead of her usual power suits. "I didn't expect to see you here," I said, when I found her later, examining the building's innovative solar design. "I almost didn't come." She traced the window frame with her finger. But I've been thinking about what you said, about designing for people instead of profit. And I quit my firm. She turned to face me. I've been volunteering at a women's shelter, helping them redesign their space. It's not glamorous, but it matters, I finished. Yeah, she smiled slightly. Think grandfather's offer still stands? About working with you? Before I could answer, Mom's voice cut through the crowd. Bianca, a word? She stood with Dad near the children's reading nook, looking uncomfortable but determined. The place looks nice, she managed. High praise indeed, I said dryly. Don't. She took a deep breath. I'm trying here. Your father and we've been talking. About mistakes, about legacy. Dad actually put his phone away. We were wrong, he said simply, about a lot of things. We can't change the past, Mom added. But maybe we could help with the senior housing project. I noticed the plans in your office last week. You broke into my office? No. Well, yes, but not to snoop. I wanted to leave something. She pulled out an old photo album. Pictures of grandfather's early projects. I thought they might help. Uncle Anthony was notably absent, having moved abroad after his failed corporate takeover attempt. But Aunt Bethany was everywhere, giving tours and explaining the building's unique features to visitors. Look who's here, she called out, leading a group of architecture students. The genius herself. Actually, I said, grabbing Celeste's arm before she could escape. We have two architects here. Celeste has some fascinating ideas about sustainable design in crisis shelters. The students crowded around as Celeste, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, explained her recent work. I slipped away, finding grandfather in his favorite spot, the rooftop garden. Enjoying the show? I asked. Immensely. He gestured at the view, not just of our building, but of the neighborhood beyond. See how the light hits each structure, how the spaces flow together. That's what I tried to teach them all along. Architecture isn't about single buildings. It's about creating connections. Speaking of connections, I nodded toward Celeste, now animatedly discussing designs with the students. She's changed. People can surprise you when you give them the chance to be better. He pulled out an envelope, which is why I want you to look at this. Inside was a draft proposal for a new project, transforming an abandoned factory into a mixed-use space, combining affordable housing, small business incubators, and community facilities. The twist, he said, I want you to lead it, but with a team, including your mother and Celeste. You're joking. I'm healing. He touched my arm. And maybe it's time for the whole family to heal, not by forgetting the past, but by building a better future, literally. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garden as visitors continued exploring below. I watched my mother actually laughing with Aunt Bethany, Celeste engaged with students, Dad taking photos of the building instead of his phone screen. You planned this all along, didn't you? I asked. The challenge, the hidden room, everything. It was never about choosing an heir. It was about teaching all of you to see what I see. He stood, stronger than ever. Money divides, purpose unites. Now shall we go down and show them the plans for Phase 2? The underground hydroponic garden? That too, but I was thinking bigger. The whole neighborhood could use some thoughtful redesign. If only we had a team of architects who understood the importance of community. I laughed, getting his point. Very subtle, grandfather. I thought so. He winked. Remember what I said about revenge? That sometimes it means showing people a better way to live? Exactly. And sometimes, he gestured at our transformed family below. It means building bridges instead of walls. Together, we descended to join the others, carrying plans for future projects that would reshape not just buildings, but the people who would inhabit them. The revenge of wisdom over wealth was complete. But something better had taken its place, the legacy of understanding that true value lies not in what we own, but in what we create together. And in the end, that was the greatest design of all.